Hi, my name's Allan Behrens from Taxal. We're industry analysts looking at technologies in manufacturing companies, trends and things like that. And I'm joined today by some erstwhile colleagues. As I was last year, I'll just allow them to introduce themselves after I finished. But what we wanted to do is this year, because we're in lockdown, obviously we've got a challenge getting together for a multi-on-one video, so we thought we'd do it on Zoom, and here we go. So let me introduce you to the team and allow them to just tell you who they work for, what they do. Stan.
Hi, my name's Stan Przybylinski. I'm Vice President of CIMdata. We're a global strategic consulting and market research firm that focuses on product lifecycle management.
Great.
One of the things we all have in common is we focus on that. We're mainly, or my work that you might have seen, if you've seen market numbers from CIMdata on various aspects of the PLM market, that comes from my team. So,
cool. Thanks. Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim Brown. I'm president of Tech Clarity. I focus on digital innovation research, really understanding how manufacturers get value from new technologies and processes.
And Chad.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Chad Jackson, CEO and Chief Analyst of Lifecycle Insights. We conduct a lot of research and publish guidance on technology-led initiatives.
Great. So this is an opportunity for us just to share some thoughts on a conference that we all attended last week for, which is called Autodesk University 2020. Last year we were there in person. This year we were there virtually. And I don't know, I mean, why don't we just sort of go around? Chad, what did you think of the conference this year?
Yeah, I thought it was good. You know, it's interesting. I think a lot of companies are, I don't know, struggling is the right word, but they're trying to figure out virtual events, and, you know, death by PowerPoint is something a lot of folks are trying to get away from. I think Autodesk did a good job with the event, like making it engaging, doing a mixture of FaceTime type of content, someone talking to a camera with it, which I think is more engaging, but also I think, you know, I think the subject matter they covered was really good as well. They've made some good advancements this year and lots of implications, but I'm sure we'll get into that here in a minute.
Jim, what are your thoughts? Anything stand out outside of it? We'll talk about the content as Chad mentioned, but what do you think of the event?
Yeah, you know, I thought, you know, and I agree with Chad. I mean, we've all been on a number of these things, and people have tried some different approaches. I thought the Autodesk event was very professionally done. I thought the keynotes in particular were almost television quality, you know, publications or productions. And actually, sometimes I bristle against that, but they still came across as authentic. They didn't come across as canned, and so I really enjoyed those. But I also enjoyed the amount of on-demand content, because I don't know about you, I get to these events and I get to like 2 or 3 things that I want to see, and they're all at the same time. And so this was nice because some of the on-demand content, in fact, just yesterday I went back and watched something that I didn't get a chance to see last week. So you miss a lot of the interpersonal interactions, but I thought overall it was a good way to learn and a good way to catch up on what was going on.
Cool. Stan?
yeah, I think to a certain extent, Autodesk has an advantage over some of the other people because Autodesk has never been death by PowerPoint, at least in the 10 years that I've been back as an analyst, right? Ever since Carl, there's seldom more than 5 or 6 words on a screen in anything that they do. So that gives them an advantage because they were always more visual than everybody else. But I agree with Jim, the production value was really good. The analyst track, which they had some separate sessions for us, was good and very informative as usual. Not as good as being in the same room with Andrew and members of his team, but it was still good and very informative. So
yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I think it was professional. I do think they've had some excellent mentoring on how to present using graphics rather than text. I mean, that's certainly been the case even back when Carl was CEO. They used to do a lot of graphics as opposed to text. And that to me wins me over because then I can listen, you know, hear what they've got to say, look at their expressions, you know, and you take away so much more. I can read the content anytime I like. But, you know, as you commented, Jim, you can look at stuff, you know, again, but the first time you see them, you can tell they're being honest, you know, appropriate information shared in good visual form. I also thought it was pretty robust. I mean, I've been to a lot of conferences this year, Zoom conferences, you know, on 24, all the various platforms, and some of them have been horribly technology challenged, right? So it was pretty robust. So well done to them. Maybe it's because of their video prowess in their business, but it was pretty good. So, I mean, let's talk about the content. I mean, they obviously shared a lot, and I mean, I've got my own sort of views, and I'm sure that they'll overlap with yours. But you know, Stan, what were your highlights?
The progress with Forge and its use with a bunch of different products, right? Because the vision was we're going to have this underlying platform that's going to serve all three of our businesses, and I think we saw more of the three businesses aspect of that this year than we had in the past.
Right. Yeah.
I have to go look at their ecosystem of partners. I mean, the idea of having that data, you know, data-centric view is important. So that was a big thing for me, seeing that. And you know, we don't get enough input, I think, or at the events from people like Brian Repke and the other people leading that.
Jim, would you agree?
Yeah, actually, that was the first takeaway that I had too, Stan, was really the progress of the platform and really starting to see it reach its vision of being the underlying technology that can allow companies to do lots of different things. One of the things, you know, that I've been looking at recently is trying to understand how people are sort of stitching together capability from different systems in order to meet certain needs. And, you know, we've all talked about out-of-the-box functionality for a long time, but companies want to do something a little more custom, a little unique to them with their own experience. And they're starting to be able to do that by having much more custom applications. You can see things like low code happening in some other companies in particular. And by breaking the solution up into capabilities, you've got the opportunity to use it kind of out of the box the way you want. But for bigger companies that can really tailor their workflow, you know, their digital design continuity plan to go from design, you know, all the way through production and maybe into the field, now you've got all these components you can stitch together. And Stan, you mentioned data, you know, the data at the center and having a common interoperable data for the platform that lots of things can work on, whether it's built by Autodesk, whether it's by a third party or where it's by a company. That vision is extremely powerful. And I think we're seeing movement along that direction and starting to see it really start to come to bear.
Chad.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Stan and Jim both said. I kind of looked at it from a slightly different angle. I think there's another perspective to kind of consider here, which is both an acquisition and development strategy perspective. So if you look at what Autodesk has done when they've acquired companies, you know, I guess nominally they kind of have kept their solutions available as standalone products, but primarily they've broken those down, like Jim said, into kind of discrete capabilities, put them on Forge. And then now you're starting to see kind of some of that momentum of, okay, now there's some really interesting sets of capabilities that you can mix and match to create functionality. And actually, that's very different from what we've seen some others. I'm not going to name any names, but that have made acquisitions yet kept those as standalone products. And now you're seeing a lot of different products where they have to create interoperability bridges between them, right? Which kind of pushes some of the onus onto the customer or the prospect into how are you going to integrate your IT ecosystem for product development. And what we're seeing with Autodesk is a different approach, a different strategy, and the outcome is looking very different now. So that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I think Forge was, for me, the highlight. I mean, obviously they made some interesting announcements, acquisitions, etc. But the progress they've got on opening up their ecosystem, I suppose to me, it's about opening up the ecosystem. It's not just the data collaboration and communication, it's about an ecosystem. And they were very, very big on pushing this open aspect of their business now, which is somewhat new. I mean, you think about it, they've the Open DWG Alliance was enemy number one at one point, and it isn't anymore. And these are changing times.
Well, and they just joined that other alliance.
Yep, that's right. The Digital Twin Alliance as well. So the other thing which is proof positive that it's starting to work, and the proof will be when third parties join it, is their extension capabilities in Fusion 360, which is built on Forge. And that was really interesting. I mean, it's a great sort of resounding success from my part on the development opportunities that lie ahead for third parties. Steve Hooper, who heads up the Fusion 360 business, said that the APIs, or the calls and the intimate connections, will be available to third parties in the not too distant future. I don't know if he said short-term future or not too distant, but that's going to be really interesting. So again, that's proof positive that Forge works. It is a cloud-based platform. As said, Brian Repke's been telling us about how good it is for ages. Now we're starting to see how good it really is, because the integrations are pretty cool.
You know, on that point, Alan, I'm interested to get everybody's perspective on this. Quick question. So like, it feels to me like maybe we're starting to enter this hybrid era of where you see solution providers developing their own cloud platforms, and then they expose some of that through a platform like Forge. Because you don't, if you're a third party partner, you don't want to exclusively offer your stuff through something like Forge. You kind of want to be able to go to each offering and integrate into those different customer bases. Are we kind of entering a phase now where it's kind of like, okay, if you're not a major provider of a solution like that, but you want to integrate to it, do you kind of do it as a cloud solution and then you plug into what everybody else is offering?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is not a new thing. I mean, I could name a number of other vendors, specifically one very large one in the CRM world, where this has been the case for a long time. It is very new in the world that we deal with, which is this sort of PLM engineering software-ish world. I mean, this is the vendors there, and historically, I hate to say it, have been pretty closed. I don't think, is anybody disagreeing with me there?
Well, I think it's, and by the way, I don't know if my video dropped it. I told you I've been having some trouble. We mentioned Zoom problems. I think I may be having one now, but fortunately I'm dialed in. So, but I would say one of the key things that I think is really cool right now is part of it's openness, but part of it's just this view of having the monolithic system that's going to do everything. And I think we've, in the ERP world, ERP was going to do everything. PLM was going to do everything. CRM was going to do everything. Supply chain management, service lifecycle, everybody wanted to be everything. And I think what we're seeing is a time now with the cloud, and I agree, Alan, it's kind of probably later in the engineering software world than it is in others, where the customers really are saying, I want to take something that works, and I want to be able to make it interoperable and take a bit of this, a bit of that. The real challenge, I think, for something that has robust data at the center and complicated data at the center, like engineering data, is that those interconnectivities are a lot different than just sharing a customer or a part file or something along those lines. Yeah. So I think the ability to sort of break the monoliths down in the cloud has been fantastic. And I think for engineering software, part of that really is trying to abstract the data out and make it interoperable. And I think that's going to be a long journey for this industry, because it's hard to necessarily be open on something that is mathematically based as opposed to just, text in a field.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, excuse me. No, the phrases that everyone's talking about, right? Digital thread, digital twin, and that's, what Jim was just saying. the digital thread has to be virtual, right? Because all of those systems that are contributing to it, you're never going to have, Dassault Systems or Siemens is never going to buy all of those segments to cover all the things that you would need to put into the digital thread. And there's no reason they should, right? And so that's it draws on what Chad said too, because that's what people have to get to. They need to have that data visibility from idea through life, because everybody's talking about how are you going to make money at product as a service strategies if you don't have access to that digital thread, so you can be sure that the thing that you make is going to have the reliability and deliver the performance that's in the service level agreement.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us are
I actually think with one more thing, Allan, that it's been that way. It's been a virtual digital thread, but the technologies we had for integration were so limited and so point to point. Now with APIs and some of the low code approaches, everybody's thinking mashups already, partly because of IoT. I think we're at a point where stuff like that is more achievable. And then the thing comes, the big issue for me is always ownership, right? Because if I'm going to have a virtual digital thread that I want to have persist, I have to be able to tell Jim's system, hey, Jim, I'm taking some of your data. Don't delete that because it's part of this bigger whole that I need to persist.
I mean,
I think we're in a good place to do that.
I think we're all, we all support. I mean, certainly all the analysts I know, I mean, us included, all support the world of open. But it is a Freudian hurdle, has been a Freudian hurdle, and a leap of faith for some of the vendors. But I mean, some of them are actually showing more open than others. But I think they're all on the bandwagon. I think they have to be. The customers are forcing that way. I think this pandemic, interestingly enough, has forced people to reconsider, the boundaries that exist between software as well as human interactions. So, Stan, why don't you just a couple of last words to the audience just before we cut off
on the Autodesk event, since that's been the focus
on the
of this
Autodesk event. Yep.
Okay. Well, the other thing that the Forge stuff exposed too is the last few events. It's been all about AEC. Makes total sense. Much more of a greenfield. Depending on who you talk to, AEC is 10 to 20 years behind discrete in the adoption of digital technologies. You need to revamp their manufacturing processes. So having the Forge stuff actually, to me, gave it a little more balance, right? Yes, they're going to make and have been making a lot more money off AEC than they've been on manufacturing. But, the Forge stuff that they showed on the manufacturing side brought some of the sexiness back for me to the manufacturing part of their business.
Jim?
Yeah, and I agree with what Stan said. Bringing sexy back is important. In fact, one of the things that they showed a sort of productized digital twin for AEC called Tandem, and I got a chance to ask, is that kind of thing going to come over to manufacturing? And the comment was that the kinds of things that are happening, in the platform are going to be cross all of the different industries. So I think that's great. My final word really on it is, I was excited to see the move forward with, with sort of PLM and Vault coming back together, with Fusion Lifecycle and Vault. I think starting to see that come together. But I also think we have to give credit that in a couple of different areas in terms of, engineering tools, things like, simulation and generative design, and also in manufacturing. In really all of those aspects, there were some great things moved forward as well. And so overall, I think, the offering is just getting stronger and stronger.
Chad?
Yeah, I was about to say, we've had a 10-minute conversation about AU, and we haven't mentioned generative design until Jim a second ago. I think there's still a lot of potential there. I think they are advancing that and making it applicable in not just in geometric terms, kind of this concept of applying AI and machine learning to ways that you can You can explore more iterations is important. And I think that's going to expand over time. That's not just going to be about design. It's going to be about all sorts of decisions and activities in product development where iteration and exploration is important. And again, to come back to the original point, Forge is a really good platform for that because it's on the cloud and, it has all these other capabilities as well. So that was the other thing. And it was amazing how they didn't talk about it that much. The push was really on Forge, but they still have a lot of potential with generative design as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've got sort of two observations. First one is Autodesk has these cadences. I mean, something that just as apparent to me is they have these cadences. In the past couple or 3 years, it's been AEC, construction in particular. I think currently the focus is going to be on Forge, and I suspect that in a couple of years, the focus will go back to manufacturing. So they do have these, I think, these cadences on their foci. They're keen not to do everything at once all the time, so which is good. You can only focus on a couple of things, and I think we'll see that in some of the acquisitions they make as well. I mean, this is sort of a prediction that we'll see that in what's going to happen in the future. I think the other side of it is on the technology side. Andrew made some interesting comments, which I've done some research on and been involved in the past few years, which is on changing nature of the supply chains and hyper-local supply chains, especially because of the disruptions that's happened over the past year. And that is going to change the nature of the industry. Generative is something that will help with that. Additive is something, again, that we didn't talk about, but it is something that's happening. I think it's spurring these types of technologies along and helping people to do virtual better. So anyway, so thanks for your time, gents. Appreciate you joining in. I hope the audience finds it interesting, and we'll try and coordinate one or two of these again in the not too distant future. Thank you.